Hello, everybody. Brian Tulsa here. What are you doing today? Today, I am participating in Blackout Tuesday for the Black Lives Matter movement, which is why your screen is black. This is something that's popped up today. I didn't know that it was going to happen today until I saw other people participating. And I thought it's a fine idea, so I got in on it. And these things like the Blackout Tuesday, like a big demonstration online that a lot of people can participate in, and that's very easy and simple for people to participate in. Those aren't bad things, but I think you should be careful about overestimating the power of such forms of activism. This is the kind of thing that is sometimes called slacktivism. It's activism that requires virtually no effort. It's activism that you can do from the comfort of your sofa. And it's hard to affect real change like that. It's not like the Me Too movement, which had a lot more to it than, just putting a hashtag on Twitter. This, like, literally is just, changing your profile picture to plain black. What good are they? It's not useless because it does allow people to stand up and be counted, right? It's a visual way to represent yourself as supportive of a movement. But it is not the same as actually getting outside of your house and doing something about it. This is why I thought it was important for me to go out to the Greenwood District, go out to Reconciliation Park, and actually go to those places and see the people and be a part of the actual activities. That I would like everyone to keep that in mind. Absolutely participate in these online events, sure, but that's not the equivalent of actually protesting or actually marching. It does not make you Martin Luther King Jr., just to change your Facebook profile. Now, it's not. I'm not going to get on a high horse and say, "Hey, you need to go out there, right now and pick up a picket sign. Otherwise, you're not doing anything." But realistically, not everybody can do that kind of thing. Realistically, that's just not something that that everyone can participate in. So you may be in a position where you really can't go out there and go to the rallies and go to the marches. Okay, no, I'm not going to judge people for not doing that. I just want everybody to keep in mind that staying at home and doing a thing on the internet it's just not equivalent. On this channel, I will do a lot of things, and I'm not going to be exclusively about, current events and political issues. In fact, I don't intend to do that very much. But the issue of police brutality aimed at the African American community, it's an issue that's in the forefront right now, and it's important. And I want to talk about it. It's important enough to talk about. I'll still do travel, and I still need to get back to that Turmoil in the Toy Box book. I still want to do a reaction to Fire by Night episode, all of those things. But this is an important topic right now, and we can talk about it. Right now, in a lot of cities, the streets are burning. Um, the protests have sometimes turned to riots. People have been hurt. Property has been damaged. And in the past, that's something that I would have been a lot less tolerant of. But as I have listened more to the protesters, to those who are trying to affect change in society, I think I understand it a bit more. And there is a legitimate argument that those tactics are not effective. And maybe those tactics aren't effective, but I have a hard time condemning property damage when the issue that's being addressed is something far worse than a smashed window. Also, when I look at what's actually going on out there, when I dig past the headlines and actually read the stories about what's going on, most of the protests are peaceful. And some of the protests that have resulted in violence and people being injured, a lot of those, including here in Tulsa, the violence has been instigated by white people. And just today we had a white kid that was arrested for attempting to incite a riot. We've seen video taken in different cities of white people going into these crowds, into these protests, and smashing windows, even though they don't seem to have really been a part of the protest. So it's not in every case African Americans picking up bricks and throwing them. A lot of times it's a bunch of white people doing that. And it may be that they are part of the protest, but they're overly zealous, or it may be that they are there just for the purpose of disrupting things. Whatever their purpose is, you can't blame the African American community if some white kid comes in, picks up a brick and throws it into a department store window. That's not the protesters' fault. Another set of protests that have gone south and become violent, some of those have been instigated by the police. We've seen examples of the police force firing rubber bullets on people who are unarmed and people who are not violent. We've seen the police arrest journalists. We've seen police officers who now have been fired who arrested some college kids that weren't hurting anyone. We see excessive force being used on people who are protesting peacefully. And so, again, that's not something you can blame the African American community for, or the Black Lives Matter movement for, or the protesters for. That's not their fault. And that's not to say that there aren't legitimate protesters who take that step and cause property damage or throw objects at police. That certainly does happen. But try to keep things in perspective a little bit. The police are using, in some cities, any excuse they can find to roll in with tear gas and rubber bullets and disperse the crowds. So you can have a crowd of 1,000 people, and one guy throws a brick, and then here comes the police to disperse everything. That's so what exactly should the police do when they see somebody, damaging property? Or are they supposed to just stand by? Honestly, I would rather they just stand by than start rolling in with guns and tear gas and mace. Because that's when people get hurt. And yeah, I don't like to see windows smashed, but no window, no department store, no car is worth anyone's life. And when you start rolling in large numbers in riot gear and start pushing people back, that's when people get hurt or killed. The police have used a tactic in a couple of cities and once here in Tulsa where they start pushing a crowd away from where they've gathered. They start pushing a crowd back. But they have another contingent of police blocking the area where the crowd would exit. So essentially you have people trapped and people panic when that happens. So I don't hold the protesters responsible for any of that. In fact, it kind of illustrates the problem that they're trying to make everyone aware of. The president has said some things that essentially, he's just putting gasoline on the flames. He's made no effort to try to calm people, to try to build bridges between the different sides. He's just wanting the states to crack down. He doesn't have the legal and constitutional authority to do very much on his own. So he's been insulting governors of different states that have not been sufficiently brutal. That is not something I ever hoped to see a U.S. president do. And there have been American presidents who have faced some very serious situations, some very contentious situations, some lethal situations. But most presidents, even the bad ones, would not try to egg it on. But that's the state of our country right now. And I'm just not going to shed any tears over, property damage when the issue that needs to be addressed is far, far more serious. This turned into a rant, and that's not what I intended. I wanted to talk about slacktivism, and that's enough. Tomorrow I'm going to get back to some more fun stuff. That's what this channel really is supposed to be. I'm trying to keep it light and keep it upbeat. But even so, I don't want to stick my head into the sand and ignore important issues that are going on. So when important issues come up, we're going to talk about them. Tomorrow, though, I feel like we can get back to, I think I'm going to get back to that book. I'm going to get back to Turmoil in the Toy Box because we need to see which toy it was that drove the author to start his campaign against toys. That's all for now. Thank you, everyone, for watching, even though you can't see me. And thank you for listening. And I will see you tomorrow.